Please note that at the time of recording, this session included not only Bill Jelen, but also Marcus Aramula, Cristiano Galvao, Steve Cranack, John Peltier, and Ken Pulse. Unfortunately, Town Halls did not record all the videos for each person, so we can only see Ken Pulse, Bill Jelen, and Marcus Aramula. So I've added photographs for when the other people are talking. I hope this doesn't spoil your enjoyment. Thank you.
The next session is going to be the Excel chat with Bill Jelen and a panel of presenters. We haven't had Bill yet, so let's give him an introduction. Bill is the host of MrExcel.com and author of 61 books on Microsoft Excel, including Excel Gurus Gone Wild and Excel 2019 Inside Out. Bill has made over 80 TV appearances and was voted Guest of the Year on the Computer America radio show. He also writes the Excel column for Strategic Finance magazine and has produced over 2,200 episodes of his popular podcast, Learn Excel from Mr. Excel. With 12 years of experience as a financial analyst, Bill brings both expertise and entertainment to his Excel sessions. He joins us today from Merritt Island, Florida. Well, I'm going to start off with a nice introductory question so you can all introduce yourselves. Could you just give us a brief introduction for everybody, and how did you get started with Excel? Steve, do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go clockwise.
Sorry, was that, did you say what I like? I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got my start in Excel back in the pharmaceutical industry. I would hate to say it, but in the mid-90s. And at the time, it was great because when I first got to work at this company, they had terminals and they got personal computers and we got Office on there. So there were like limitless opportunities for improving things by automating. So I built like an overtime tracker for our employees. I built just all kinds of cool things, but really what made my mark was I built a tool to take data from a lab test system and put it into these reports that we used to have to send down to the FDA to release each batch of our vaccines. And it was a process where prior to that, everyone would literally look on screen and transcribe the data into a Word document and then print it out and sign it. And I made a combination of Excel and Access so they could just type in a batch number, press a button, they would get their report. And it eliminated 5 jobs, unfortunately, but I think they were able to move on and they weren't actually let go. They moved on to other places. But that's how I got my start. And through a series of crazy events, I made my way to Microsoft, where I was actually fortunate enough to work on Excel as one of the product managers. And now I'm here working at some product, which is really cool as well. So I'll pass it off to John.
All right, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm John Peltier. I first used Excel version 1.0 on a Mac back in about 1990. Unfortunately, the Mac I was using was woefully underpowered, and if I tried to do any sums or anything, it would just freeze up the computer for 5 minutes. But soon after that, in about 1992 or maybe 3, I got switched onto a Windows-based PC. It was Windows 3.1, so this goes back a couple of years. And all of my colleagues in my lab, and I'm not a finance guy. We were all in engineering department doing R&D on advanced metals for aerospace applications, turbine discs, and so forth. But anyway, so all my colleagues were using Lotus 123, and Lotus didn't have a Windows version, so they were running Lotus 123 in a DOS prompt, right? Which, you know, it was as crazy as it sounds. And so somebody got me set up with, you know, so I had this Windows computer and, you know, whatever. And I hated the way working in a DOS prompt was. And I didn't really care for 123. And one of my colleagues is like, you know, I have the disks for Excel, and this was probably a version about Excel 3 or whatever the first version was for Windows. And so I installed it. And as soon as I installed it, I realized that one of the advantages Microsoft had when they built Excel for the Mac is they learned how to make a nice graphic user interface with menus and buttons and so forth. And so as soon as I opened up Excel, I was at home because I even though I couldn't use Excel on my Mac, I was using Word on my Mac. I wrote my dissertation on Word for Mac a long time ago. That was 87. And so I was at home and I could do stuff, and people are, doing all this stuff. And then when Excel 4 came around, that was when I decided, I had to do this stuff that took a lot of crunching, and it was using the solver, but it's like I kind of had to do a meta solver because I had to do the solver to solve half of a thing, and then do the solver to solve the other half, and keep doing this until the endpoints of these two loops got close enough. And so it would take to process 12 of these loops, it would take me like a whole afternoon. So I'm sitting here, and this is back when I keep dating myself. The manual was a paper manual, it was a book, and I'm using Excel 4 macros. And I figured out this thing, and I got it so that instead of taking me half a day to process all these loops, I would push the button, go down, get a cup of coffee, come back, and it would be done. And then VBA came out, and it's been all, I guess you'd say, uphill since then. Okay, that's about how I started.
Uphill since then.
Well, I mean, in the positive sense.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's not like with the Atlas stone. All right, there you go.
No, not the guy that Sisyphus. Yeah.
All right, I'm Ken Pulse. I'm from Excel Guru. If I go back to my first memory of Excel, it was one of those lovely take your child to work days, otherwise known as forced labor days, where I got the job of doing data entry for my scientist dad all day. But that's not where I fell in love with Excel. So where I fell in love with Excel is when I actually ended up getting an accounting job, and somebody wrote us a macro to do certain things, and then they left the company. So, the only guy that liked computers was the guy that got the job of maintaining it. And man, I'll tell you, once that sort of door opened for me, and I learned that, holy cow, you can record stuff, and then you can actually write stuff that you can't record, and then you can, learn a little bit more and write some pretty cool things like loops and whatever else. And I got absolutely hooked. And where this sort of big catalyst for me was, I think more than anything else, is we had our head office that came in and said, look, we need to cut your staff by 33% overnight in your office. All those positions are going to be gone by next Monday, and we're going to give you more work to do and tighten your deadlines, so you got to do it faster. All the reasonable things your head office asks you to do. And I went back to my boss, said, look, I've been tinkering with this VBA. I think this is the answer. He said, I don't know what the heck else to do with this, Ken. Go for it. And I lived in Excel in the VBA editor for about a year. And man, it's changed the entire trajectory of my entire career path. I absolutely love that language, love the software, and all the things we can do with it. So that's my villain origin story.
All right, you can choose the next victim.
Let's go with Marcus. Oh, he's on mute.
Mute.
Oh, big mistake, right? Beginner's fault. Being on mute. Sorry. Now I have to pay like $5 to the tip pot, right? Yeah, my name is Marcus. Very happy to be here. Maybe I'm the most exotic because I use Excel, of course, since like the beginning 1990s, but not really seriously. I just used it as a spreadsheet for smaller things, and started using it more seriously when this Power Pivot add-in came into place. Maybe some people can still remember, like in the 2010 version, and then in 2013 you didn't have to install anything, but it was like part of the product. And then Power BI desktop came out in 2015, and this like changed my career. So I was a employed consultant for most of my career, and since like 6 years now I'm self-employed, and Power BI is a strong part of the story, making me self-employed. So really love the tool, coming more or less from the backend side. So I also do SQL Server stuff on-prem and in the cloud, but Power BI is a very, very important part of the whole story, because this is how people then see the numbers and interact with the data. So it's a very, very important to build a good data model and nice visualization so people can work with it. Then to Cristiano.
Hi, I'm Cristiano Galvão from Brazil, now living in the US.
and I started with Excel during an internship before the graduation. During the high school, I studied a technician course in data processing, and then I started playing with Excel a little. Nothing so serious, but it was an organization inside the government. It was a water company, precisely, and they had lots of archives with paper, lots of paper, and then it was the very beginning of things recorded in spreadsheets. But then later I started the graduation, and then another internship. This one was more serious in a multinational. I was an IT intern inside procurement and serving to logistics as well. And then I expected to put in practice lots of technologies, and then I always heard, no, you have to open a ticket. These will go to India. This will go to England, UK. And then I started to automate the things by using VBA. And turns out that on the very beginning, when I was a kid, I started computing with a very primitive computer with no diskette. We put in the cassette, the tapes, and then on the TV. And this runs on basic language only, nothing ready. We had to program. So when I started seeing the things that I could do with Excel, I soon discovered VBA, and then I found out, hey, I know this thing here. This is an evolution of the old BASIC. And then I started doing things that created frames inside the procurement department, but also a couple of enemies inside the IT, because they had no control about the tools that we developed independently, and they were not aware of the tools. Today the things are very different, but it was a big adventure to me to discover the possibilities that we could do. And fun fact here, I started reading books, and one of my first books that I read was Bill Jelen's. It's a classic in Brazil. Yes. And then that book, the Green Book, a couple of years later, I did a technical review for the Brazilian translation, because the translators, they translate VBA commands that were not supposed to be changed. It's fun. So lots of fun facts, and then today I'm here. Lots of fun facts that led me to come here today. That's it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So my Excel origin story is Lotus 123. All right, I'm going to go all the way back. Right, and it was Lotus 123 in a 2-disk system, 2 floppy disks, 1 floppy disk to run the program, 1 floppy disk for your, for the data. Right, and I remember I was working as a teaching assistant in college, making $4 an hour, and they had this research project where they made the MBA students sit and watch an 8-hour videotape about spreadsheets, or half did an 8-hour interactive laser disc presentation where they could interact with the thing. And the study was, where could they learn better? And at the end of this, they gave them a 40-question Lotus 123 test, and my job was to grade that. And no one got above 40%. Right. And so, at first I'm like, oh, wow, this is really bad. Everyone's failing this test, the whole bit. But then somewhere along the way, I said, well, you know what? I should go through and figure out every single answer here. Like, why was this important? And, I'll be smarter than all these MBA students, right? Because I'll know all this stuff. And so that kind of jump-started the whole Lotus 123 thing. And I remember we used Lotus 123. I started in 1987 at work, and we used Lotus into the 90s, like 94, 95. And so I was firmly entrenched in Lotus when we switched to Excel. And I remember the day that they gave me Excel, and I'm trying to get something done. Like, it's coming up on 5 o'clock, it's after 5 o'clock, and nothing is working. And there was one guy downstairs named Adam who had been using Excel for a long time. I'm like, Adam, nothing is working. And he's like, do you have VLOOKUPs? I said, yes, of course I have VLOOKUPs. He says, add comma false to the end. I went back upstairs and added comma false at the end, and everything worked, right? And everything after that moment, like that the VLOOKUP needs a comma false. Yeah, everything was fine after that. So that, my origin story in Excel was 7 years of Lotus. And doing command line macros, the /fr to file retrieve, and then it was crazy. We would automate all kinds of stuff.
Is it my imagination, Bill, or like memory wise? Because I had Lotus 123 mixed in the middle. I just kind of skipped over that. But didn't we have to put @ signs in all of our formulas back
Absolutely.
in Lotus as well? Yeah, that's what I thought. But you could start them with a plus instead of an equals, which was. We still see remnants of that showing up from time to time,
including in every spreadsheet I create. I'm a plus A2 guy, right? Which they make it into equals plus. Like, why'd you type the equals plus? I didn't put the equal sign there. I put a plus sign there. And it's funny. There's some functions, like really old functions, like the dsum function, which I haven't used. To me, that's still an @ sign dsum. It's an @ dsum because the last time I used it probably was Lotus 123. I haven't had to go back and use that anymore. So.
Yeah, I think all those D functions are quite a lost art from what I can tell. Although I know Liam knows them very well.
Yeah, they're powerful, except for the fact they require 2 rows each. One for the heading, one for the criteria. If it wasn't for that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, now that you're all done aging yourself by revealing you've been using versions of Excel from before I was born, I'll ask if there are anything you missed from these older versions that's been sort of removed or just hidden away or obscured behind the scenes.
So there was a crazy thing that if you started column A with an exclamation point, a bang, that row would not print. Right. So you print the whole thing, and you could have a whole series of rows that just wouldn't be in the printout. Which, I guess we could hide rows today, but that was kind of something that definitely Lotus didn't, or Excel didn't steal from Lotus.
Was it only column A?
It had to be the first column of the print range. So I guess if you set your print range to C, if the first character that was going to print was a question mark or an exclamation point, they wouldn't print it.
Yeah.
That's some esoteric knowledge, man.
I mean, I'm sure it was an awesome tip back then, but now it's not needed. So it's
yeah,
one for the archives.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember we lost something from VBA around 2000 or something like that. Something got deprecated. I mean, it's really kind of the last really change that's been made to VBA, but I don't even remember what it was. So, I mean, the amount of impact that it's had on my life is pretty small, but I can't say there's anything that I miss from the program. I'm just happy that they bring new stuff in. That's more important to me. So,
boy, and we've had a lot of great new stuff recently, haven't we? It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
From small stuff like the check boxes to really big things like this new Copilot with Python. I'm horrible at Python, but now Copilot is writing the Python for me. It's like, holy smokes, this is amazing.
Yeah. I can think
the violin charts, amazing charts.
Violin charts. I don't even know what those are for, but I know you can create them, right?
You can draw music with them, of course, right?
Right.
Very soon.
I was actually trying to work out how to make violin charts in Excel, and all of a sudden Python comes out, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I even want to try anymore. So because it's complicated, you have to calculate, all kinds of crazy distribution functions, and then how do you make something and fill it that way? So you make little thin lines that go out from the center to fill it in and so forth. And I don't know. It's like, okay, maybe I should just learn Python. So.
Well, John, I remember back in the day when you wrote a massive VBA routine to unpivot data. And and I remember you having a conversation with me at one point saying, like, why did I do this? Like, why didn't I just learn how to do Power Query and do the thing with an unpivot in Power Query? And I mean, I think that's sort of one of the things I look at when you start talking about, like, well, should I do a violin chart or what? You know what? If Python could do it, why not just mix the technologies together, right? I mean, you got them in there anyway. So if you're building an add-in to do these kind of things now, just make it easier to automate the creation of the Python version of it rather than a regular, classic version. So, I mean, I think that's one of the cool things that's happening with the tool today is that we get all these extra pieces that are put in, and it's not like we have to choose. Do I go VBA? Do I go Power Query? Do I go Power Pivot? Do I go Python? We can do all of it, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah. Funny thing about that unpivot routine is it used to be part of the commercial software that I sell, the Excel plugin, and I took it out after I realized, it's just as easy to do it in Power Query, and I got like 3 or 4 people who had just upgraded to the new version. It's like, where did unpivot go? I use that all the time. I said, well, you could use Power Query. No, I can't. I want that unpivot button back, so I put it back in. So.
I was going to comment
if they knew how yours worked, right? There's no reason to try and learn Power Query. So that's a learning curve to come up the Power Query.
Well, yeah.
Had they heard of Power Query?
I think so, but it's up there in that bit of commands. Power this, power that, and those names might be a little bit scary.
Oh, don't go there. Don't go there.
I know. But
we did that. You know that.
But
I know we didn't.
No, yes, we did. That was our complaining about all the things that start with the power, and the next thing we know, everything no longer has power.
I know, but the message got misreceived because the issue wasn't that it had the word power in it. It was that we used the same name to describe 5 different things, come up with unique names. That was the point. Then we got power is scary. Let's take word power out of everything. No. See, I've still got scars from this.
And maybe go back a little bit to Ken. You mentioned how it's great to have all these different things you can choose from, but I think there is a little risk with the Python part because I'm not sure everyone's going to be willing to pay for that. I think the other things are.
But you don't need to, right? Like, I mean, that was one of the things that, so believe me, as Python was rolling out, one of the things that I was very vocal about with Microsoft and was kind of sitting back and would not recommend anybody was, what is going to happen with Python? Will it be available to all users? And granted, you do need to be on Office 365, but you don't have to pay a dime extra if you're on Office 365 unless you want to. If you want enhanced compute, then you can go and you can buy the extra license on top of that. But if your extra license expires, it'll fall back and you can actually still use the unenhanced compute to be able to go and actually calculate things. So to me, in those areas, the real thing is just basically look, if I'm going to sell something to you, are you a Microsoft 365 customer, or are you on one of those 4-digit versions of Excel that I recommended you never buy in the first place? As long as you're on 365, it's a safe place to go to. So I think that really comes down to just knowing who your customer is when you're trying to build them a solution in those particular scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And kind of related, I see a question came in from Oz in the Q&A. Is anyone else concerned that Excel is leaning towards becoming a professional developer's tool with the recent additions like Python and Lambdas? At one time, WordPress was for everybody, and it's turned into something that only professional developers can do anything useful with.
No, I'm going to pick and choose which tools to use, whichever is easiest. And the fact that Python's there, Python was scary at first, because you have to go Google what the Python code is. And you don't understand a thing. But now that it just puts the Python in and bam, you get a chart. And then once I have the chart, I'm like, I wonder how I make that blue. So then I can go look at the code. It's like, this code isn't that scary. Like once you have the thing working, and that's not a threat anymore. Like you have your deliverable, you just want to tweak the deliverable. Yeah, then it's pretty easy to go in.
A corollary to what you just said, Bill, and what Oz was saying, what's the danger that now all this Excel development work is going to be done by a bunch of people using Copilot? I mean, it was bad enough when we all just used Google to do it, but now they're using Copilot, and Copilot actually sticks stuff in there. Where is the validation? Where's the verification that what you're doing, the results you get, they look pretty, they got nice charts, they got nice tables of numbers. Are they right? Do they mean anything?
You know what? Don't get me wrong, John. Like I 100% agree with you on this, but that's not a problem that Copilot introduced. I mean, that's a problem that got introduced as soon as they actually shipped the spreadsheet out the door to the first person that was going to use it, right?
Yeah, but Copilot
people,
spread that to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it helps make it faster, but how many terrible spreadsheets have you seen in the wild that predate Copilot by 10, 15 years? I've seen
only
lots.
3 or 4.
Maybe you should open a 5th spreadsheet, John, right? Like, the reality on this stuff is that, people have been able to build really bad things for a long time. It's just that I think in some cases Copilot's going to let them do it a little bit faster. I see there's going to be a great job for consultants out there to try and fix a lot of models that people don't understand how they built, right? I mean, is one of the things. But if I can sort of go back to Oz's point about, it becoming a professional developer's tool, I would actually argue that Excel has been a professional developer's tool for a long time. It's just that a lot of people don't approach it in that direction. Just the simple fact of you have to put a comma false at the end of your VLOOKUP is something that people did not know in a lot of cases, got things wrong, didn't check the results, sent it out the door, making bad business decisions. So, for years when I talk to people about building solutions and teaching them about building solutions in Excel, one of the things that I've always said is you need to start thinking like a developer. You need to take responsibility for these things. You build something, you need to test it, validate it, make sure it works. All of these components around this, because you are building business intelligence solutions in a lot of cases that people are going to rely on. So are there more tools? Yeah. Does it look a little bit scarier and unapproachable at first? Maybe. Depends on how you introduce people to it. And I think there's going to be a real art around, building that introduction to Excel course now. The question is, where do you start? Is it introduction to data processing with Power Query, or is it introduction to just using an Excel spreadsheet, or is it an introduction to Python for somebody who is into that world of things? And those could have very different onboards for people, but I wouldn't take away anything. I think having the variety and the choice is a really, really important thing that we actually get here. So,
one thing, here's something that I'm running into, and that's the confluence of, let's say, dynamic arrays and Python or Power Query. So Power Query always wants to return a table. It's always going to return a table. I get that. But then let's say I want to take that table and I want to filter that table, and maybe I should have done that in Power Query, but it's, here I am. So I filter it. Now the result is a dynamic array. And I want to feed that into Python. So, that needs to be turned into a table. Python can consume that easily if it's a table. And, so now I have this weird step where I have to take the dynamic array, copy it, and paste special values into the table, which can't be the most efficient way to do this. But, that's what I've come up with so far. And it's
Can't Python consume a name?
Yes, I bet it could.
So you name your formula A1 hash. That's refers to.
Yep. All right. Oh, I'm gonna go try that. Hang on, let me write that down. I'll be right back.
He's gonna try right now.
I want to see a video about
Change
this
the video.
week, Bill.
There's something that I was thinking about, this question that Oz wrote in the chat, the Q&A. During the VBA era, we could do.
Oh, you're gone.
Oh yeah, I lost sound there for Cristiano.
Problem with your mic, Cristiano. While he gets that sorted, I'll mention that someone named Jan Karel, I'm not sure if any of us have heard of him.
Okay, can you hear now?
Put a comment in the chat. Yes, we can. I'm just reading a comment and then we'll get back to you. That
Great.
Copilot enables average Joe to create incomprehensible formulas and no one checks them. And then Ken had a great response as compared to the user creating an incomprehensible formula all on their own.
And they still don't check them, just for reference. So
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Cristiano. Back to you.
Yeah, but during the VBA era, the empire of VBA, let's call it this way, we could do scary things such as playing with registry, shell commands, things that I shouldn't mention here, but okay, we are moving out of VBA. We could do scary things, inappropriate things that could almost damage the computer, not the hardware, of course, but delete an important folder and mess the computer. When we see Python, there is an isolation And all these new tools, they are more isolated. Many of them run on the cloud. They have no access to important things on the systems. And then they are more, I see these tools like more data analysis than development itself. So I think we have more tools. Of course, we should observe what the power users are doing inside the companies, but somehow they are more controlled than VBA. VBA code only could do something obscure people wouldn't understand and bring some potential problems, like the famous macros that were forbidden, and then you know, this kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
The comments of VBA macros being forbidden are near and dear to my heart. I get a lot of comments, or a lot of people that come to me, you know, from big organizations where IT takes the approach of, hey, there's VBA macros, let's block this, let's shut it down outright, and it absolutely guts me when I run into something that is in that scenario, that you know, you've got such an incredibly powerful tool that people don't understand. And yes, it can be abused, but there are some ways to mitigate these things where, you know, if you trust people, if you buy digital certificates so that, you know, you're trusting that code has been written by a human before it is able to be run and things like that, versus a blanket, you know, shut the door on all this stuff. And I mean, one of the sayings that I've had for years is, if you want to get rid of all of the risk in business, you can get rid of most of it by closing the doors and not letting anybody in ever again. It won't get rid of all of it though. So, you know, you need to be really careful about these things when we're, you know, shutting down a technology. It terrifies me the first day that somebody finds something in Python that says, oh, this could be dangerous, let's shut it all down, right? Or, you know, it's not the approach to do. I mean, security is important, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it needs to be managed properly, and the risks need to be mitigated, not outright, let's kill the technology flat out, in my opinion.
Yeah, it kills me when they shut down VBA. It's like, okay, you got a Lamborghini and you're going to let people just use the radio, right? You're not going to let them open the hood or start the car. You know,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Why would you do this?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, it's a great radio. You can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
Not tuned to my channel. That's the problem. Geez. Yeah.
Just to pick up on the AI question, we've talked about a little bit about the danger of it and how it can help with Python. How do you see AI, not just Copilot? What effect is that going to have on Excel and modeling in the future, do you think?
So if nobody else has opinions on this, I do. Listen, I don't think this would shock anybody on this panel at all, but I want to give somebody else a chance to speak first if you want it. Going once, going twice. Okay. So I'll give you my opinion. I think AI, I think, can be a fantastic tool. I have some frustrations. I have some hate to certain parts of AI. I really am upset by the way that the AI engines have been populated with content that I believe has been stolen from content creators without any compensation going back to them. I know my site is one of the top 10 that was scraped in order to feed one of the AI engines out there that does things, which is flattering, but now the traffic is being redirected away from my pages so people don't find me anymore, which is why I put it out in the first place. So that part is upsetting. Having said that, I also use AI on a daily basis. I do a lot of programming today in VB.net and building Excel add-ins, and ChatGPT is almost always open on the side because I can get good code samples very quickly from that. And don't think that I don't realize that I'm no longer going to Stack Overflow, so I'm part of causing the problem of them not getting traffic anymore. I totally get it, right? It's this vicious circle. But, you know, at the same time, I mean, you know, I feel in a lot of ways that AI is going to change the game. It's going to change the way that we do things. I think the problems that have already come up in the chat about people being able to build crazy complicated formulas they have no idea how they work is going to increase. I think that there is going to need to be a lot of understanding from people that they can't take the results out of these engines de facto standard, plug and play, drop them in and just go with it. You do need to be able to verify them. And that's going to take knowledge and education. And this is probably the part that terrifies me the most about AI right now, is based on some surveys that I've seen done, 70% of people will take the AI answer right out of the gate, but only 50% of them are actually correct. And that means that you've got about 35% of solutions are being built on something that is not trustworthy and not workable. But how do these people know? They actually, in a lot of cases, come back to me and say, I don't need training anymore because AI is going to do it for me. And I say, because AI is going to do it for you, you need more training so you can actually understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with AI is it is going to let competent people do work much faster, which is great. It's going to allow people who don't have that competence to make many more mistakes much, much faster and not recognize what's going on. So I think the push by a lot of big CEOs to try and get AI everywhere and cut people is doomed to fail in a lot of companies. Having said that, in the hands of the right people, I think it's going to be an absolutely incredible tool that's going to allow them to work much faster. So I'm on both sides of the AI fence. That's my opinion. I'll throw it out to you guys to hit yours.
I'm not always sure about naming of Microsoft. When Microsoft naming things, they're not always like my favorite names to pick. But like for Copilot, I think they choose a very good name because it's just a Copilot, right? It's not the pilot. And if people misunderstand this feature as like I tell it and it will do anything for me, then it's just wrong, right? You still have to be the pilot for everything you're doing, and the Copilot is assisting you, but you still need to be in charge. And this will be exciting how people will use these things. And I also see this like maybe the requests for training will be more because people then need to understand all the stuff they created with Copilot. Maybe training and workload will be less because people depend on like this 80% solution, which is 80% right and correct. Maybe it's better than previously because maybe without the Copilot they build a solution which was like only 70% right. I'm not sure about that. Don't know any numbers. So there's a lot of it's like uncharted water, right? We don't really know what's coming there. This can like swing into one side or the other side. So I'm on the exciting side. When I used these tools, especially when I know something about it, I'm really astounded how much wrong the answer can be. So this gives me like a sort of feeling, oh, this is really a dangerous tool, right? For things where I'm not very certain, I mean the text or whatever formula, whatever I get back, it looks like correct, right? It's like I'm teaching in school, right? And also people, my students try to fraud and fake answers, right? So this looks like my students, right? So ChatGPT looks something like my students. They try to fake that they know something by putting it into really great words, right? But the content is still like wrong, and they try to mask it by good words, but the content is just rubbish, right? So let's see how this.
I had to laugh years ago when this stuff was all first starting to come out with ChatGPT was first rolling out. I remember Bill Jelen saying that. Now I can't remember if I got the uncle's name right, but he said, when I ask it a question, right, it's like it's my Uncle Bob. Was it Uncle Bob?
It was Uncle Mike.
Uncle Mike. Okay, who comes back with this incredibly convincing answer, which is all BS, right?
Yep.
But it's so convincing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Oh, it's really simple. Just use this function. Wait a second, that function doesn't exist. And then I went back and I asked ChatGPT, hey, which spreadsheets use that function? They're like, well, it's Excel, Google Sheets, and Open Office.
No,
it's in none of those. It's in none of those. And that was fun. It was fun early on just to make fun.
That was your prime function, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Is prime function. Yeah. And even today, I actually applaud when I ask for how do I tell if this is prime? They're like, we can't do that. Like that's the right answer. You can't do that. Yeah, good. Because anytime you try and do it, you get it wrong.
I always laugh when I go back. You'll have this conversation with ChatGPT, right? You'll ask it something. It gives you an answer, and you come back and you say, no, that doesn't work. And this always cracks me up. So when it comes back and says, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, right. You're right. It doesn't do this. So here, try this instead. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that the first time? You're supposed to be intelligent. But no.
But that didn't work either. So
no, exactly.
It also doesn't always give you like the best solutions. Like I know if I go to certain websites, I'll get, the best, easiest solution. But there was one recently where I asked it something about splitting up text, and this was in Copilot, and I just was trying to see what it would say about a formula, and it didn't mention anything about text before, text split, text after. It, gave me the old left,
right,
laying, right, all that stuff put together. And I was like, well, what about text before, I think I said, and then came back. I was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. We can do this with text
Yeah.
before.
That's because I got
Well, that-
trained on the text functions article for my website, which is from 1996, that didn't have those functions, and that's why it's giving you. Yeah. So
Yeah.
That reminds me of my daughter is a data scientist now, doing machine learning and Python and all of that fun stuff. And she's tried to get me into Python, but it hasn't worked. But I remember when she was in college, she was taking some computer science classes. She minored in computer science, and I helped her as well as I could install like Java on her Windows machine, which a lot of people don't do. So she got it installed. She was having trouble, and she called me up, Dad, I'm having so much trouble. And I went to, who was it, Sun Microsystems at the time that owned Java. And I went to their website and I was looking for help, and nothing makes any sense. And I told her, no, here's what you do. You get an error message, you type it into Google. It will not go to Sun Microsystems. If it's an Excel-related problem, it might go to Microsoft, but somewhere in that first page of results, whatever the problem is, there will be somebody that encountered that problem, drove them crazy, they solved it, and they were so happy they solved it, they put it on their blog, and that's the resource you should use to fix the problem.
Right.
And I don't know how complete something like Copilot or ChatGPT is going to be, getting that one guy's blog, getting that solution as part of their, big, large language model, so they can help people solve that. So, people are still going to be using the old-fashioned left search, whatever, to find a certain piece of text. And I mean, now we have regular expressions coming along, and something else to stretch our brains. But some of these solutions are so powerful now.
good luck with getting the regular expression pattern right, though. Not from Copilot.
Yeah. I tried 3 different tools to get a regular expression right, and none of them did it. And then I went to my friend who knows regular expressions, and he got it right. Yeah, so I was like, okay. Yeah,
I got it. Was that Patrick?
No, it was
no. Okay,
Smosker, the Mr. Excel board.
Fair enough, because I'd go to Patrick Matthews, former MVP.
Okay.
That guy lives and breathes his regular expressions. So,
here's a weird one. I love Copilot for things that don't matter, like in ChatGPT. Like if there's some data that just doesn't matter, it's just for fun. And I've had to start writing songs, right? And so he writes some pretty good songs, and then I have another tool that does the music for it. But a weird one the other day is I wrote to them about roasting hatch chili peppers in Florida, right? And the thing that just scares me a little bit is, I just opened ChatGPT and I asked this question, and they gave me a great song, and it's a beautiful song. But like the 4th line, they mentioned that I'm in Merritt Island. I didn't tell them I was in Merritt Island, right? Like, okay, how does it? And that still bugs me to this day. Like, how did you put that in? There's a lot of cities in Florida. How did you get that I was in Merritt Island? And they're probably like in the back. We know, Bill. Yeah.
It's because if you Google that information, you'll find it somewhere, right? I mean, so one of the fun experiments with ChatGPT right at the very beginning was to Google your own name and say, "Tell me about whatever." And during that process, I think I found out that I wrote Guerrilla Data Analysis.
All right.
So I'm like, no, I did not write that book. And I'm sorry. And it would come back with another book of Bill Jelen's that I wrote. And I'm like, okay, Bill and I are not the same person. Like, what is going on here? But, it also would, cough up some code or some stuff that verbatim was posted on a user group website for something or whatever, right? Like, because I guess it found that in 3 or 4 different places. We tend to use the same bios and whatnot. So somewhere out there, something knows that you're in Merritt Island, and maybe it pulled it off of your publication. I don't know, but yeah, crazy, right? But scary indeed.
Yeah.
So
just a little bit.
And Carl says it's your IP address.
Yeah.
So important. Use a VPN.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, it was a nice line on the song, so what the heck? That's fine. But just what else do you know? What else do you know?
I will say one of the things I like to do is I'm not a Google user at all, but I go to Bing, and when you search there now, the first block of what you get, it seems to be from ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever.
It's AI, right?
But it does put nice little reference marks in there. So I read it and then I hover over the reference marks. And if it's a website that I either know of or sounds legit, I might go to that. So I like doing that. That's like a real easy way to verify what you're getting before you just start trusting and doing something.
Oh, that's good. It's good.
I have a new problem. I've fallen in with a group of people who they're not using Excel, they're using that other product. I don't even want to say the name of it. And when they sent me the first link to that spreadsheet, I revolted. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. But after months and months and months, they've worn me down to the point where I'll open their stupid spreadsheet and then take it to Excel. But like the other day, someone had a problem where all of a sudden Excel just decided we're not going to give you a save option. File save is no longer there. It had worked for a few hours on the spreadsheet, so copy from Excel, and then they went to that other product and saved. They're like, well, screw Excel. I'm never coming back. If you're not going to let me save. And it's funny how much you can take data from one and paste it in the other, and everything just works. And that worries me, right? Like I want Excel to be better. I want Excel to be better. And
they went through this once with Lotus, man. Remember that?
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, it happens, but I'm always curious with that. Like, why wouldn't it let them save? Did somebody email them the thing as an attachment? They double click on the attachment, they start working, and then it won't let you save because it's actually in the attachment that's in the temp file somewhere on your computer, not an actual, like.
Really good story. The person had been at the same job for 20 years. They retired. Hey, all retirees get Microsoft 365 for life. Oh, but not the one on not the desktop, not Win32. You get the online version. And at some point, they timed out. Like while they were working on the spreadsheet, they timed out, and Microsoft
Their license expired and they couldn't save.
Right. Just decided, hey, we're not going to warn you about this. We're just not going to let you save. It seems like that's kind of a jerkish thing to do.
You kinda, yeah. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
I guess we're nearing time, but I think we can fit in a few more, right? For quick. So I'll ask, Excel's seen plenty of new functions recently and new features as well. So if you could right now, what would you add sort of function or feature-wise to Excel?
I would add a null feature, function, null or blank or whatever you want to call it, so that, you don't have to rely on something like NA and get an ugly #NA error. You can actually get something that is treated by all other formulas as if it's a blank cell, not double quotes that look blank to humans, but a true blank. And this was something that came up years ago, and they were actually working on it. And finally they came to me and said, and I had discussions with engineers about how it should work and so forth. And finally, they came to me, and it's like, well, we decided that we can't do it because it's going to break our whole calc model, our whole calc engine. And I'm thinking now, all the work they've done with their calc engine, can't they squeeze it in now without breaking everything?
Right.
And it would just make. I mean, obviously, I've been tracking this one down for a long time, but that would be the one function I want to see.
Can't you just use Power Pivot, John?
All right, so
that's
a perfect segue. I would like to actually see the Power Pivot engine revved up so that it catches up to what's in Power BI today. That's the number one thing that I would like to see in Excel today. That's a massive ask on my part. I know that, but that would be monumental. I'd like to see our different join types. I'd like to see the new DAX functions released to the general public rather than just being in beta. I'd like to see, I'd actually like to see complete VBA support for it, which is something that got the, hey, let's release it here and see if anybody needs it later. I need it. I've needed it for 10 years. But yeah, revving the Power Pivot engine would be huge to me. Absolutely massive.
I'll mention one that I think is fairly simple, and I think it's close to John's heart, and that is the ability put in like a formula or something for the min and max on a chart or
Yeah.
a cell
yeah.
reference. I mean, that would be so great.
There's workarounds, but there's nothing that's robust. And the workarounds pretty much need VBA.
Yeah, I did a workaround once where I was basically normalizing every value in the chart, so everything ended up being
Right,
between
yeah,
0 and 1, and it was
Well,
not. It
this
wasn't
is how
fun and
I
didn't
started
look pretty.
doing charting is with a you know, on a small desktop HP computer long before they were, you know, it was just HP Basic is what it ran, and we had a multi-pen plotter, and in order to draw a box, you would tell it, okay, move the pen to XY, put the pen down, move to another XY, move to another XY, and so you basically had to scale everything yourself. And you can do that in Excel, and you can build kind of a dummy axis, and with you know, data labels instead of the axis labels, and you can use the little cross marker instead of tick marks, so you can put them wherever you want. And if you want grid lines, you can use error bars because they are behind the points and so forth. But it's like, it's a lot of work, and I'm not going to expect 99 point, I don't know how many 9% of users to do it. Roberto Mensa, maybe. He does a lot of weird stuff like that. And in fact, I've gotten to the point with some things, and you know, he and I would exchange ideas, and then I'm at the point where, oh, that's too complicated, I'm not going to do it, and then he'd come up with something. And but you know, it's got to be something that users can use,
Right. Yeah.
Joe user, not Roberto Mensa user.
So I'm not going to ask for a new one. I'm just going to mention the one that surprises me that came out. You know, I was waiting for pivot by, like that was going to be really exciting, but it's group by. Like I'm using group by almost every day. It is just awesome to have a nice little data set. Like I need to know how many of each of these there are. And so group by is my new favorite function that I'm using constantly that came out in the last year. So check that out if you haven't checked it out.
That's so weird. I just go straight to pivot or to power pivot and stick it in the pivot table. But but old habits die hard, right?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So,
Marcus or Cristiano, do you have a wish on your wish list?
There are so many new things that I couldn't even scratch the surface because they came all together in the latest year. And maybe some functions could have a new argument, something small. My wish list is not something very urgent or that could dramatically change something, because there are lots of new features. Lambda is great, let is great, this group by pivot are great as well, and then now Python. So I think we have lots of new things and to test, explore, and there are also the beta features now. So I'm okay with new features for a while, and I would like to test some beta stuff. I see some possibilities to improve, and then I'm going to report the channels that we have as MVPs.
Well, I would look for not in Excel, because I work more with Power BI than with Excel. I would wish for something like VBA or something like this, so where I can like have a macro, like have a button, changing some slicers or things like this, so to automate things. I mean, I'm coming from the backend, right? I write SQL, I write procedures, and this is where I like feel my hand tied together. Where I would wish to have. I totally see this is again not for the Joe average user. They are happy with like reading the reports, but I would like to automate things and having scripts running. So let's see if this is ever coming on the product backlog. That would be really nice.
All right, I'm
And other than that,
this is crazy. There's 10 different kinds of spaces. Character 32 is the space on your keyboard, but there's 10 others. Like character 160, non-breaking space. I really need a function that's going to just convert all of those white space characters to spaces. Like, it would be right there with clean and trim, like somewhere in that group, but this one would be useful. So that would be.
Oh, it's, you just need your regex function inside your substitute so that you can look for any white space character and replace it with a real space. Can we do that today? Can we use regex and substitute? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure you can. If I can just figure out the regex and remember it.
Just use Copilot.
Right.
Which of the 12? They all give different answers. Yeah, I can probably generate that regex pattern for you because I think I actually might already have it. But yeah, if it'll nest inside, I haven't tried it because I mean the majority of the regex work I actually do is all in VB. So, yeah, that should be possible.
Right. Well, someone like Microsoft could do it, I bet.
Well, I mean, it would be nice if you just had a fixed spaces formula that, but you know what? If you can wrap it into Lambda, look at that. Look at all these technologies coming together: regex and lambdas, and
come on. I want something I can just type without looking it up.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we could keep going. I know we're like getting close, and we're on a pretty we stick to our schedule for this conference. So I just have to say personally, I'm like super honored to be on a panel with you guys. So thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and I wish we would have scheduled 2 hours for this and invited more people. We'll have to think about that for next year.
Yeah, this was fun.
That'd be fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Very fun. Very fun. Thanks for inviting.
Thank you. It's been excellent. It's been very entertaining to watch, I can tell you. So yeah, I would love to see all this again. It's been great. So thank you all for coming.
Right, okay.
I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to let people do evaluations. But yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.